What's up, and welcome to another edition of Locked On NBA, the biggest stories with the local experts. I'm your host, Jackson Gatlin, also host of Locked On Rockets right here on the Locked On Podcast Network. Today, we'll be joined by Cyrus Saatsaz from Locked On Warriors as the Golden State Warriors extend both Andrew Wiggins and Jordan Poole. Was this the right move to give extensions to both Wiggins and Poole? Plus, we check in on the aftermath of the Draymond Green situation coming up in just a moment after a quick message from my friends over at BetOnline. BetOnline.net is your number one source for all of your football betting info and odds this season. Find out your latest player developments, team matchups, news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every single game that you can get your hands on. As always, BetOnline remains your continued source for all of your sports wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every single sport out there. They've got you covered for football. They've got you covered for basketball, which is right around the corner. MLB postseason, all the fighting odds, UFC, MMA, boxing, you name it, they've got you covered over at BetOnline. Right now, you can take a look at who the odds-on favorites are to win the NBA title this season. The Golden State Warriors leading the pack at plus 575. You got the Boston Celtics right behind them at plus 650. The Milwaukee Bucks at plus 700. Then rounding out the top five, you have the Brooklyn Nets and the LA Clippers both at plus 750 apiece. So for all of that and more odds, head over to betonline.net to learn more about the trends in action available to you. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. Joining us now is Cyrus Saatsaz from Locked On Warriors. You can follow on Twitter at Dog Surf Roadshow. Cyrus, Warriors handing out a lot of money over this last weekend. Andrew Wiggins inking his four-year extension for $109 million. And then Jordan Poole, the Poole Party, inking his extension for 4 years, $140 million. Let's start with We'll start with the Andrew Wiggins one here because I feel like Andrew Wiggins is currently undergoing one of the best NBA redemption arcs just across the board because he was at a point in his career where it felt like he was kind of cast away. He was a throw-in, right? Like a salary dump for D'Angelo Russell back when the trade originally happened. Picks being given to get away from his deal, and now he's turned into a valuable player for a championship caliber Warriors organization, was a pivotal part of their run this past season, and he's now earned himself a permanent home, a future in the Bay Area, and he's going to be the starting, a starting caliber piece for this team for years to come. How do you feel about just seeing where he was when he first got to Golden State and to where he is now and how important he is to this organization?
Yeah, first things first, great to see you, man. And I don't know necessarily if I agree with the notion that he was just thrown in as a salary match to make the trade happen. I think the Warriors actually saw something in him, and they saw that he could be a great fit. And given their track record of just developing talent, getting the best out of players, I think they actually saw. I don't know if they saw this level of greatness, but I think they did see a player in Wiggins who can actually fit in and contribute and make a difference, because even at that stage of his career where, he was putting up the emptiest stats ever with the Minnesota Timberwolves, you could still make the argument he was as good, if not better, than Harrison Barnes. And the Warriors were winning championships with Harrison Barnes. So for them, Wiggins was actually an ideal fit, but I don't think anyone, foresaw him turning into this. Look, first of all, this is the most expensive PR campaign in NBA history. Because all of a sudden people are not nearly as mad at the Warriors as they used to be when it comes to Draymond Green. The fan base is already largely forgetting about it. I don't know if they'll fully forget, and I don't speak on behalf of the entire fan base in saying this because there's still a lot of people that are just very perturbed by the whole incident. They're kind of over Draymond Green and his antics, but at the same time, I mean, look, this is a sport. It's a getaway, and the Warriors are the defending world champions. They have the potential to be, repeat champions. Their depth is incredible. So the Wiggins extension, while a little surprising, I mean, I didn't see anyone bring it up at all or predict it. It's awesome. I mean, it removes a distraction from the team in terms of, what's going to happen next year. It's a relatively bargain deal in the sense that he's actually taking a pay cut from his current salary. Although I think that was envisioned given, that last salary was a max deal that I don't think he would have gotten anywhere. It's just that was a lot of money. But so he takes a pay cut, still gets paid, handsomely. And now he's a long-term fixture. And I think everyone's happy. I don't really see anyone who's looking at this in another way. So, one positive step for the Warriors.
Absolutely. And again, couldn't be happier for Andrew Wiggins, finding a home and finding a lot of, NBA success after, like you said, some, not so great years there with the Minnesota Timberwolves.
And just real quick, Jackson, if you don't mind me interjecting real quick, Wiggins is also an example of what happens to a player who might not be comfortable taking the vaccine, but still did it anyways. He got rewarded. He sucked it up. He did something he didn't want to do, and he got his contract extension. Meanwhile, a certain player for the Brooklyn Nets maintains that, he didn't have the right to do it, but it cost him a lot of money. And it's just a tale of two sides when it comes to, two individuals who both had feelings about the vaccine in terms of not wanting to take it. But Wiggins decided to suck it up, and he got rewarded for it. So there you go.
Yeah, some very similar circumstances there. So two sides of different coin, or same coin, I guess I should say. The other guy here that received a ton of money, Jordan Poole, could not be timed better. Like you said, almost the perfect PR campaign spin, right? Where you have all this Draymond Green stuff happen, and it's like, hey, we're rolling out the Brinks truck for Andrew Wiggins and for Jordan Poole. It's crazy to think that the Warriors' luxury tax bill further down the line might be greater than their overall payroll bill, which is even just absurd to think about. But shout out to the Warriors organization for putting their money where their mouth is and being willing to pay for a championship world-class organization, talent level across the board. And Jordan Poole, right, he absolutely earned this deal. He came out, you had people calling him the third Splash Brother last season, and so from your standpoint, was giving him the extension the right move?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot of money. You're right. It's a $140 million extension over 4 years, kicks in next year. So he's going to be averaging about 35 mil a year, I believe. Yeah, I absolutely think it was deserved. This is someone who is 23 years old and averaged nearly 20 a game last year. He's a favorite to win the Sixth Man of the Year award. A lot of money for a bench player too, by the way, because that's what his role is. He's going to come off the bench in a lot of games.
Well, you also kind of project him to, as Steph and Klay. I know it's, terrible, heresy to even think about this, but as those guys age out, or down the line, take lesser roles, whatever, you kind of envision Jordan Poole stepping into a starter role conceivably further down the line, right? So you're not necessarily paying just for correct. A bench guy.
But who knows when, right? I mean, I don't see Klay stepping back anytime soon. I don't see either Steph or Klay just, moving on for years. So, I mean, look, this being a starter to me has always been overrated. It's all about who finishes the games and what you're actually contributing during the game itself. He is a high volume player in terms of minutes, but I mean, the whole thing is crazy. I mean, Bob Myers came out today in the press conference and just highlighted the fact that Poole got this extension because of his work ethic. That is like the thing he highlighted repeatedly. And it makes sense. Jordan Poole is someone who loves to work. And Bob Myers was being very pragmatic and saying that you don't find that every day. And especially for the common fan, who might think all these athletes are just busting their ass 24/7. Not always the case. A lot of these people are human beings just like you and I who just some days just don't feel it and maybe don't give 100% or don't want to come, and their attitudes reflect that. Jordan Poole is someone who him and Stephen Curry are always the two earliest players at practice. They get their hours before everyone else, and Jordan Poole loves the game of basketball. That's all he wants to do. In fact, when he was asked questions, and I'm sorry if I'm jumping ahead here, but when he was asked about Draymond Green, he really just skirted over that and was just talking basketball. And he loves the game. And as someone who is relatively young, he's 23. He averaged nearly 20 a clip last season. So I envision his scoring average going up. You're right. He's a successor long-term to Curry or Thompson. He's kind of in between the two in some weird way as an athlete and player. But yeah, it's just good vibes all around, and the Warriors needed that. So yeah, I'm calling this the most expensive PR campaign in NBA history for a reason, because it cost them a ton of money. But suddenly there are smiles abound, Chase Center.
And last thing here on the vibe check, you just mentioned him there moments ago, Draymond Green. How did Green and Poole look, in tandem, sharing the court together? Are they, does everything seem to be okay, at least, as appearances go, sharing the floor? Any issues in that regard?
There's nothing that came out as a flag, but there were some noticeable differences in the routine in the last preseason game. Draymond Green, for example, was the last player to come out for pregame warmups. Normally, he comes out earlier with his teammates. This time, he was alone. The NBA's opened up locker rooms again this year for the first time in 3 or 4 years. But they've also recalibrated their media credentialing system, where there's a lot less credentials issued for media to get into the locker room. So I used to always go in there, and that number's really just been whittled down to like beat reporters and really long-term media members. So I actually don't have locker room access this year, which kind of sucks. I don't know if you can get in there or not. Are you tier 1? Did they?
It's situational.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so anyways, the point is, I did hear that in the locker room, neither player have been seen in there together. Usually either Draymond's just in there or just Poole's just in there. We don't know if it's like circumstantial. We don't know if that's intentional, and not necessarily in terms of like animosity or awkward feelings, but because they don't want the media to see them together and then start, being body language experts. So they did communicate on the court. Everything looked fine in terms of their play, which, typically is what we're talking about, although in this case it's a little different. So nothing out of the norm in terms of the game itself, really. Poole and Draymond, Draymond was like a little isolated during the game at the end of the bench, which seemed a little out of the norm. But then during a period in the game, Poole and Green were sitting next to each other, and they were seen talking. So who knows? I feel like I'm turning into a TMZ, like one of these celebrity body language types. I don't want to do that. All I could tell you is, clearly there's something off here. I mean, Jordan Poole said at the press conference, and Jordan Poole is not someone who likes dealing with the media to begin with. So for him, it's never fun. Like, this is not his favorite part of the job, is answering questions. And so when he came out today for the press conference, he immediately said that, him and Draymond talked. Draymond apologized, but I also want to just talk about basketball. And a couple media members tried to get questions in there, and he just reiterated that, the focus is basketball and winning championships. And so he didn't really reveal much. And again, this is something that I think between those two will blow over if it hasn't already, in terms of just any animosity. I also want to finish up on this note too, because I don't hear a lot of people talking about this. But when you bring up the fact that the Warriors might have this huge luxury tax penalty next year, we're talking like over $500 million. What is not being discussed, and it should be discussed because it's very, very relevant, is that the NBA's collective bargaining agreement expires this year. There's going to be a new CBA next year. And at least from my sources, and brought these sources on Locked On Warriors, every indication is that they're going to revise the CBA to stop penalizing teams in terms of luxury tax penalties for their own draft picks, because it goes against the very spirit of the rule. Like, the only reason why you would maintain the rule with the next CBA is just to punish the Warriors. There's like no other good reason for that. And so part of me wonders if Lacob and Gruber, the owners of the Warriors, at least the managing partners and the predominant owners, if they have some sort of inkling, if they've read some tea leaves in terms of being aware of rule changes in the CBA next year. So there's a very strong possibility they in fact will not be paying much in terms of luxury tax penalties, because the only player that's making a lot of money on the roster who was not drafted is Andrew Wiggins. The Warriors have just been wildly successful in terms of their draft picks. And while the penalty would still be there for the Clippers, Lakers, teams like that, the Warriors probably would not face much, if any, of a penalty. Maybe it would be minor because they are paying a lot of players, max or near max deals. But it remains to be seen what that figure is. So I just want people to be cognizant of the fact that maybe it will not be a $500 million plus payroll for the Warriors next year. It might be somewhere in like 200-300. Still a lot of money, but not 500, like $500 million,
Yeah, no, hey, that's a fantastic note. And hey, will the new CBA be favorable to the Golden State Warriors? Will Draymond Green and Jordan Poole be able to kind of coexist as we navigate the season and, kind of keep tabs on what their relationship looks like moving forward? Of course, you're gonna have us covered for all of that and more over at Locked On Warriors. Cyrus, I appreciate you stopping by Locked On NBA with me.
Anytime, man. And I hope this time we don't get maybe you want the attention we got last time. Our segment last week blew up, man. I'm not a big fan of that level of attention, but but thanks as always, Jackson. Always a pleasure, man.